Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on our cybersecurity webinar. My name is Chris Engler from Engler IT. I'm the CEO, and Engler IT is a leading IT service provider in the Baltimore area. We provide small businesses with IT support. And joining me today is my executive assistant, Stephanie Slater. Stephanie, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, so guys, cybersecurity is a big deal right now. There's a lot going on with it, and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to just have to run through a bunch of things real quick so that we can get through this webinar in an acceptable amount of time. I don't want to take up your whole afternoon. So we're aiming for 15 minutes right now. Okay, so cybersecurity. Let's look at that. Why do we need cybersecurity? It's a good question. We only need cybersecurity for one reason, and that one reason is to prevent a data breach. So what is a data breach? A data breach is a security incident in which sensitive, protected, or confidential data is copied, transmitted, viewed, stolen, or used by an individual unauthorized to do so. This is when folks have information that they shouldn't have and usually acquire it by bad means. Okay, so what happens when you get a breach? Bunch of things. Let's talk about these real quick. So identity theft. If you're out there losing security numbers, social security numbers, and credit cards, folks' identities are going to get stolen. Reputation harm. If you're out there losing information, it gets traced back to you. People are going to be less likely to trust you. Ransomware. So ransomware is, if it finds its way on your network, it can be devastating. And we're going to talk about a specific case in a little bit. Production loss, so work slows to stops. Data loss, especially if you don't have good backups. Financial loss, there's direct costs like ransom, legal fees, IT fees, and then there's indirect costs. So when the production slows, when production stops, when there's delays, when your reputation gets hurt, it all can affect your bottom line. Compromised accounts, you and your customers might have to go around and secure bank accounts, other types of accounts. It's going to take a bunch of time. It's not something that you're going to want to do. Customer loss. So if a customer, if you lose customer information and it gets exposed to the public and they know and they find out it gets traced back to you, they're going to be less likely to do business with you. Legal action. This is especially prevalent in regulated industries. So if you're not safeguarding the data that you have in your systems, and you're exposing it to online, then you're going to be liable for that information, liable for that action. Recovery. It takes a long time to recover from a breach. It can cost a lot of money. It's something that can happen very, very quickly and take a very long time to recover from. And we're going to look into that now. So IBM did a study of all the breaches that they recorded last year. And what they found out is that the average breach costs $3.92 million to recover from. It's a lot of money. And then what they were able to do is from that number, they were able to figure out that it was about $150 per record is what the liability was. So one thing that you can do for your business is take account of how many social security numbers you have, how many credit card numbers do you have in your systems. And if you add all that up, multiply by 150, that's an idea of what your liability is if you come across data breach or if that data gets breached. So, and then the other thing I want to point out here is the 279 days. That's time to identify and contain a breach. So that's usually what we see when I look at these reports. I see something around 279, 300. It usually takes about 3/4 of the year to figure out that you've been breached, and 2, to recover from it. It takes a long time, costs a lot of money. So it's definitely something that we want to prevent. Data breaches went up 17% in 2019. All signs point to that trending upward. So it's just going to continue to get worse. Let's look at some examples of some prevalent breaches that took place in 2019. May 7th, 2019, we have Baltimore City got hit by a ransomware attack. I'm sure you read this in the paper. It was a big deal. The entire city grinded to a halt. All the city offices, all the agencies were impacted. It was a big deal. Everything stopped. It took 2 months before some of them came back up online. And I have heard up until recently that some things still aren't 100%. Cost them over $18 million in direct and indirect costs. And all that was because of one Microsoft patch from 2017. Do your updates. Here's another one, July 2017. Darktrace reported that one of their clients, a North American casino, they're not going to tell us who because Darktrace is not going to throw their clients under the bus. But what they did, the bad guys did something really interesting. They launched their attack by some vulnerabilities that were in these smart thermometers that were in a fish tank. So these smart thermometers are part of the Internet of Things, IoT devices. We're going to talk about that a little bit more coming up. And then they were able to exfiltrate 10 gigabytes of clientele data. We can only speculate at this time, but you can imagine what they were able to get their hands on. Let's take a look at the threat landscape, kind of like the threats that are facing us right now. Breaches, 43% of breaches took place in small businesses, not big businesses. The dark web is something that I want to introduce you to. It's something that's important to understand when it comes to security right now. Dark web refers to encrypted online content that is not indexed by conventional search engines. Also known as the dark net, the dark web is a component of the deep web that describes a wider breadth of content that does not appear through regular internet browsing activities. Let me show you a little more about what that means with this picture. So when you're on the internet, you're using Google, Facebook, any website, you're on Instagram, all those things that you're doing when you're connected to the internet, there's really only 4% of the internet. The rest of it is like the 96%, that's the deep web and the dark web. So the deep web is stuff like scientific papers, medical databases, things that you don't normally see. And then the dark web is something that you need specialized software or hardware to access. It's encrypted, there's lots of privacy, there's lots of anonymity, which lends itself naturally to criminal activity. And one function of the dark web is that it kind of acts as this marketplace for bad guys to be buying and selling the information that they're breaching. The credit card numbers, the social security numbers, the passwords, the email addresses, all that stuff is changing hands here. Let's talk about how breaches occur. 52% of breaches in 2019 happened because of hacking. That's bad guys sitting behind the computer, typing in things, cracking into your systems through the internet. 33% included social attacks. This is important. This is a big deal right now. Social attacks, sometimes you also hear the term social engineering. That's when the bad guys are trying to manipulate you and your employees into divulging information or to grant them greater access to their accounts unbeknownst to them. It's a big deal. So if people don't know what's on their screens, they need to be trained on how to identify these threats. 28% involve malware. Malware is viruses, ransomware, adware, all the nasty little applications that end up on your computer with or without your permission. And really what you need to protect yourself against that is the right endpoint security, the antivirus, things like that. The 21% that we're looking here were errors, were casual events. What that means is that we had, these folks had hardware or software in place that had problems with it. And the bad guys were able to exploit those problems to launch their attack. 15% misuse by authorized users. What that means is that there's people in the company, they're supposed to have access to this information. They're fine, they're good people, but they just didn't know what precautions that they're supposed to take when handling this information, and it led to information falling through their fingertips and into the hands of some bad guys. And then the last thing here, the 4% of breaches where physical actions were present. What that means is that bad guys only really had to do things on site 4% of the time. What that means is that the bad guys are not coming in through your front door. They're not coming in through they're not climbing in through your window. They're not even interested in coming to your place of work. What they're doing is they are coming in through the internet. They don't need to come on site. You're not going to see these guys coming. All right, let's look at some prevalent attack strategies that are being used right now. Spoofing. Spoofing is when someone is pretending to be someone that they are not. It's when you're getting emails from people and it says you're someone that you know, but you know it didn't come from that person. It's when your phone is ringing and the caller ID says that it's a local number, but you know that when you're talking to that person that they're not down the block. Phishing. Phishing is when people are trying to get information out of you. They're trying to trick you into getting information. So one example of a phishing attack is when you're getting when you get an email, you click on a link and you're taken to a login page that looks like your email login page. You put in your username and your password, you hit submit, and nothing happens. And what happened there is that you just gave your username and your password away. Some bad guys that made a website that looked like your login page. Malware, viruses, ransomware, adware, all that kind of stuff. Bad guys are still using this, as we saw in the last slide. You want to make sure you have some endpoint protection to protect you against that stuff. Ads and pop-ups. This is a big deal because I'm seeing a lot of this lately. It's scaring people. Bad guys are able to put things up on your screen going through like Google Chrome browser. They're able to send you notifications. Many attacks look like yeah, and they're usually trying to convince you that there's something wrong with your computer, that you need to call them, or that your antivirus is expired or something like that. And it's always some kind of a scam. Island hopping. Island hopping has to do with attackers exploiting the trust relationships between you and your customers and you and your vendors. And so many attacks come in the form of emails, and they're going to look like they came from your vendors. They're going to look like they came from your customers, and you're going to be less likely to question these communications. And the bad guys know this, and they're going to do whatever they can to exploit that. And then there's traffic monitoring. This is when the bad guys are looking at what you're doing online when you're connected to the internet. Usually when you're connected to public Wi-Fi, they're watching what you're submitting to websites. They're watching what you're getting from websites. They're looking at all that stuff, passwords, credit card numbers, everything that you get that you can plug into a website and everything you can get from a website. And then USB, there is nothing secure about USB. There's no way to tell the difference between a cable that will charge your phone and a cable that will charge your phone and steal your information. There's no way. Don't use public charging stations. Try not to use USB flash drives. USB flash drives can take immediate action the moment that they are plugged into your computer. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to click on any files. You can plug them into your computer and you can be immediately infected. So if someone hands you a USB drive, hand it right back to them. Now that I've sufficiently scared you, I am now going to give you some information to help you move confidently through the world with a little more peace of mind. I'm going to give you some ways on how you can protect yourself and how to stay safe. Use complex and unique passwords. Have uppercase, lowercase letters. Use numbers. Use symbols. At a minimum, do those things. Have unique passwords among your accounts. Don't use the same flavor of password. I know that you all do this, but don't do it. We all do this. So the problem with that is that if one password gets compromised, all of your passwords get compromised. So use different passwords from account to account and use complex passwords. Password managers are really good with this. MFA and 2FA. That's multi-factor authentication. This is when the website sends you a text message or an email. They send you a verification code to make sure you are who you say you are. It's a second method of verification. If you have this available for your accounts, get it, turn it on. If you don't have it, especially for your email account, if you can't turn it on for your email account, then you need to have an email system that has that ability. It's a big deal right now. Scrutinize the information on your screen. Make sure that you know how to tell the difference between what's real on your screen and what's fake on your screen. And this is a big deal because this is how all the socially engineered attacks take place. They all exploit this problem where people don't clearly understand how to tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. And you might need to have some training for you and your folks to be able to do this. Remember that USB is not secure. Don't use public charging stations. Don't use USB flash drives. Stay off public Wi-Fi. Use your phone as a hotspot whenever you can. If you have to use public Wi-Fi, use a VPN to help encrypt your data. Be mindful of IoT devices, Internet of Things. These are all those little devices, the smart thermometers from the fish tank at the casino that we talked about earlier, the smart thermostats that you can get for your home, the smart fridges, all these little devices, they're making their way into our lives. They're making their way into our businesses. If you have these things or plan on having these things, they all have their own security concerns associated with them. Make sure your IT folks know that you have these things or that you plan on getting these things so that they can structure your network in a way to keep you safe. Dark web monitoring. The only way to know if your passwords are floating around the dark web is if someone's looking out for you. Make sure that you have a dark web monitoring services that are looking for information that is associated with you, your business, and your employees. And then the last thing is that when you're going out and you're looking for vendors, you're looking for new applications, new pieces of software, or you're getting new hardware, make sure they have security in mind. Find out what they're doing to keep your data safe. Now, and then the last thing is like, what do you do? What do you do if you suspect a breach? If you even have the smallest inkling of an idea that you might have be experiencing a security breach, even if you're 99.9% sure that you're not, that one little 0.1% or 0.01%, anything, tell your IT people immediately. If they have their act together, they will have the action plans. They will have the playbooks. They will know exactly how to verify that you're safe and whether or not a breach has occurred. All right, we got it's Q&A time. Let's open it up, see what people have to say. Stephanie, we have any questions?
Yep, some questions just came through. So here's the first one. Some of our employees' email accounts have been hacked in the past. We think they are secure, but how do we really know that they are secure?
That's a good question. Happens a lot. First thing you want to do is change your password. Make sure it's a complex and unique password. Make sure you can rewind this video once we have it posted. You want to look at the security best practices. At the very least, enable multi-factor authentication so that when someone wants to access your email account, they have to deal with going through your cell phone as well to get that code.
Great, thank you. Here's the second one. How do I know if I have been breached?
Oh, yeah, that's a hard one. So it can be very difficult to determine whether or not you've been breached. The first thing that you want to do, and your IT people should know about this, is that you want to make sure that the software and the hardware that you have in place has all the right security logging enabled, and that you're keeping track of what people are doing on your network, what people are doing in your systems, and it's not there by default. It has to be turned on. It has to be configured. So if this is something that you set up yourself, you need to make sure that you're consulting with an IT professional that can make sure that you're keeping track of that stuff. And then the second thing that you can do, second best thing that you can do is to do dark web monitoring to see if you have information floating around on the dark web.
Perfect. All right, here's a third one. We are a small company and only have 4 computers and no server, and do not have a large IT budget to afford all of the security out there. What reasonable precautions can we take to guard ourselves against a breach?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the thing that's really popping up to me right now is that you said you don't have a server. Everybody has some kind of a server. If you use email, there is a server handling that email. There's things that you got to do to secure your servers, and your IT folks will know about that. You want to implement the security best practices. You want to make sure that you have a firewall, that you have endpoint security, that you have your network structured in a way that's going to keep you safe.
Okay, and here's the last question. We have antivirus software and we have a firewall. How much should we really be budgeting for IT security?
Yeah, so having antivirus and a firewall is a great place to start. Really what you need right now to be effective is to have what we call next generation endpoint security. it's more advanced than antivirus, because the antivirus, traditional antivirus stuff's not going to pick up all the threats that are out there right now. They're not going to pick up all the malware. So you want next generation endpoint security. You want next generation firewalls. Then as far as like how to budget, really the thing to do is if you want to take a budget, is you want to look at the value of the data that you have. You know, consider what it is that you're keeping in your systems and what that is worth to people. And you can even go back to look at the $150 per record and maybe take account for, you know, what your liability might be if you do experience a breach. And I mean, really, if you want to get down to a number, it's something we'd have to talk about.
Okay, well, that looks like we've covered all of our questions. Chris, is there anything else you wanted to cover before wrapping up?
Connect with us, give us a call, shoot us an email, go on our website. There's lots of good information on our website. We have free reports that you can download. We're on all these social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You can follow us there. We're posting information most days of the week. We're posting something that's going to help you learn a little bit more about what's going on with computers and how to keep your business safe. So yeah, that's it. So thanks everyone for coming out today, for watching us, and it's been a pleasure being able to share this with you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.